Hello and welcome to YHTV's Empowerment Through Positive Psychology. I'm Christina Suzuma. Welcome to our new series of shows. And here we are going to come straight into 2014 with this new series. At this point, I would like to share with you a moment of positive psychology with our wonderful, wonderful friend and colleague, Megan McDonough, who is the author of A Minute for Me, available here in Shop Yoga Hub, of course. She spoke with me and did a show with me on Trinity of Life, episode 45, on the power of yoga and positive psychology. She herself, being a yogini and teaching yoga, was able to integrate the two of them together. So enjoy this moment with Megan McDonough.
I've taken another leap, I guess you could say. That leap has taken me to learning a new language. And it's not French, it's not Spanish, it's not Italian. It is the language of positive psychology. That's what I spent the last year learning with Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar at Kripalu. And I'll tell you, quite frankly, that it was a language I was oblivious to 12 months ago. In fact, when Kripalu actually asked me to build out their online learning and their certificate in positive psychology was that first program, I looked at the person who I was talking to. I said, what is this positive psychology stuff? Why are you bringing that lesson in first? And by the way, who is this Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar?
That's usually my thing. Who's that?
Who's that? Who is
I thought you knew everybody in that world. Oh, good. I feel good now.
So, apparently I am out of the loop on this one, Christina, because apparently both positive psychology and Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar are rather a big deal. And for me, they're very well known. For me, though, and maybe there are other listeners too who have never heard of positive psychology. For me, this past 12 months have been like, wow, I just never knew this existed. See, when we had talked last time, we talked about A Minute for Me, which is one of the programs I did for you, and using yoga to live with ease. Those programs really focused on those concepts of living deliberately. And I went at those concepts from the perspective of first being human, living this human experience as a mother, as a woman, as a business person, all of these components. So I talked a lot about in the programs that we did before, my experience and how I use those stories of my life to gain more self-awareness. But I also came at it from yoga because, like I said, that is really my main focus, is how one of the perspectives I use in viewing the world. But this positive psychology stuff, I'll tell you, this gave me a whole nother language. What positive psychology looks at is the science of happiness. So when we say the science of happiness, it's based on data, on research, on really rigorous research.
So science-based.
It's science-based, yes, which is really fascinating to me because the way that I've moved through the world, and I think actually a lot of yoga practitioners move through the world, is in a way that's highly kinesthetic, right? We feel our way through the world. Or as Leo Buscaglia said, braille your way into life. I love that image, that there's a tactile way in which we have a felt sense about which direction to head. But what the idea of positive psychology from a science perspective has given me is this ability to both leverage the kinesthetic way of life with this data. I love efficiency, so I can look at these studies in this field of positive psychology. I can say, the science is saying this is the most efficient way to do X, Y, Z, or to experience greater levels of happiness or flourishing or life satisfaction. And I could incorporate them in my felt sense way of being and bring both together. I could do it more efficiently and with more discrimination, because if you go into a self-help bookstore, you could just see rows and rows and rows of self-help book. Where do we go? Where do we get started? Looking at the science of positive psychology can give us really a very, very logical path by which to open the heart and feel more grounded in our life. So for me, that's what I've been up to. I've been both building with Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar and Kripalu the Certificate in Positive Psychology program, which is wonderful, and taking it for myself as a student. So I've been learning this new language since we last spoke.
This is amazing because really, if people who don't come from the background of the spirituality and they hear the yogis and people talk about following your heart and living life deliberately,
Yes.
they don't, it's hard. It's not easy for them to take in. It's like, oh, that's such a woo-woo world, you know? So now you're saying that this positive psychology is science-based. So it's for those who are more linear, just so to say, or have that way of thinking, it's easier for them to understand.
Yeah, there's multiple ways into this idea of happiness. It's not exclusive to those of us who are kinesthetic or body felt yogis. This path of happiness is open to all. And what I like to think about is, the Dalai Lama, who obviously into meditation, also looks at the neurobiology. It looks at the sciences. He tries to understand, how is my meditation practice? How can it be informed by the science? And the same is true of yoga. So that the more that we as yoga practitioners, if we are kinesthetically based and love this idea of using our body to feel through our life, that we can also bring in this data component, this research component that can inform us in a different way.
Mm.
Yeah. So it opens it up both for ourselves to learn more about our own experience through the data, and it opens up the doors wider for others who may not be, from a yoga perspective, wanting to enter into the doors of exploration through yoga. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Could you be more specific on how it does relate to yoga? So,
yes. Yeah. Let's talk about that. First of all, I want to relate a story about kind of the linkage in my mind between the emotional state and the physical. And I'll tell it by way of a story. I was working with a private yoga client, and we were doing, as we normally do, some movements, and we'd also talk about what the experience was. And when she came into the session, she described her work around this one particular problem as that she was cultivating patience. That she was working, her idea of what was happening was, it was difficult, but she was working with patience. As we worked through the yoga postures and took the body into different movements and cultivated awareness and had a dialogue about what was happening, she said, Megan, I think I was confusing patience with passivity. That's a really fine level of awareness between what's the difference between being patient, which has a felt sense of just a relaxed sense of things will work out, with passivity, meaning I don't really have much impact to change this, so I'm just going to be passive around it. Those are two very different emotions that could be easily confused. So in this yoga practice, we were able to more clearly discern, not we, she was more able to clearly discern what was the emotional set point. And I love that about yoga therapy in particular, because many times in yoga therapy, we talk about, align the shoulders this way, or lift up through the heart, or draw this hip back, or all these anatomical cues. There's also a very big emotional component, which is fascinating to me. So what I've been really studying with positive psychology is, along with the research, what in particular, how does that inform the yoga, the movement of our bodies? So I want to look at and show your audience a little bit about the research. What is the research about this idea of using our body postures as a way of developing positive emotional states? I think I have a slide for you too about this, but let me tell you first a couple of set the stage for what this study was. This one is fascinating. This was a study done by Dana Carney in Columbia, and actually Amy Cuddy at Harvard was involved in this study as well. And there's a great TED Talks video where Amy Cuddy in particular talks about this study. The research study went like this. There were two groups of people. one was asked to do what was called power posing, high power posing, and the other group was low power posing. So in the power posing in one, they would be instructed to take up a lot of space. So they would be instructed to put their hands behind their head and their feet up on their table, just like you would expect an executive maybe to do, the character of an executive at his desk. Or to stand up with their hands on the table. Those were power poses. Those were expansive, taking up space. It had a quality of openness. Versus the low power poses where people were hunched down. Maybe they crossed their arms or crossed their legs or were closing in. So the slide, we can look at the slide, shows us those particular postures. One, the power posing, the elbows back, chest up, open. And the other group, the low power posing. What she did is when people came in to the research laboratory, she took saliva tests and she measured two hormones, testosterone and cortisol. So testosterone is typically the hormone associated with power, feeling of power, of strength, of confidence. And cortisol is usually that hormone associated with stress or anxiety. So they came in, she took baseline measurements of the testosterone and cortisol. Then she put people into the power pose for 1 minute. So they put their hand behind their head, put their feet up on the table for 1 minute. She'd take them out of that pose and put them into another power pose with standing up with the hands on the table. That was one group. And then she would test again the testosterone and the cortisol. Second group came in, same thing, did a pre-test baseline of testosterone and cortisol. Put them into low power poses, which is the crunched up power poses where they were sitting and they maybe dropped their head or their arms and legs were crossed. Put them into one low power pose for 2 minutes, and again, the other for 1 minute, and then the other pose for another minute. So a total of 2 minutes. And then did that test again of the cortisol or testosterone. The results of these 2-minute poses are amazing to me. What it showed was after 2 minutes of power posing, just putting this physical body in a particular setup, those people who are put into a power pose, a position of power, expansiveness, their testosterone level rose. I mean, it was measurable. You could see their testosterone levels rise. That's what the results were showing. So they felt more powerful, but they actually had the chemicals that determined the physiology changed. So it wasn't just like physically, their physiology changed. So not only are they having more of the power hormone, testosterone, but their cortisol levels measurably went down. So just by putting the body, I mean, they're not asked to think anything differently. They're not asking to breathe anyways. They were just putting their body, their physical body in a different state. And I love this. I mean, isn't this amazing?
Wow.
And I know their cortisol levels went down. Put them in a power pose 2 minutes, testosterone rises, cortisol goes down. What happened with the other group, the low power posing? Well, their testosterone level actually went down. And their cortisol level, the stress hormone, went up. So this is amazing to me. I mean, I can't tell you, to me, this is sort of radical, the idea that in 2 minutes, the way in which we hold our body matters. It matters not only physically, but it matters physiologically.
Wow,
right? Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. And now it explains why anytime I go into warrior pose, I suddenly feel this rush.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we can say that that's the relationship between things like of our emotional state and the physical postures. And that's not the only science. I mean, there's other science too that is compelling to me. An Adducian smile, not just, so there's these smiles where you could do a nice smile. But then there's what's called an Adducian smile, where you not just have this smile, but it goes bigger up into the crow's feet, So regular smile just engages the zygomatic muscles, so it pulls up on the lips. But when you have an Aduchian smile, it also activates the orbiculus. Oh, I have to get into my science again. Orbicularis oculi. How's that? The orbicularis oculi
Wow.
muscle, which pulls up on the cheekbones and gives you those crow's feet. So, don't worry about the wrinkles. The truth is, the Aduchian smile actually has been shown to raise those chemicals associated with positive emotions. So just the act of smiling is not just a physical thing. If we make it really heartfelt, it actually has a positive benefit. Another, so keep smiling, Christina.
So keep those crow's feet. I always tell people my face is going to be a roadmap in a few years.
Yes, and you're a happy person, so good for you. Smile a lot, stand tall, and there's actually even more interesting science. John Cacioppo I think he's from Chicago, University of Chicago, did this really interesting study where he looked at the movement of arms. That he asked people to do one of two movements. Take your arms and pull in like this. So the arms are coming up and in, like come, right? We do that naturally. Or he asked them to push it down and out, like away. They were asked to look at some images, some characters. And those people who were doing this with their arm motions, in other words, come in, come closer, yes, I'm accepting, actually liked the characters better. They were judged as being more likable. Can you imagine that? Wow. So, this idea of how we move our hands, the gestures that we make, how we smile and use our face, how we stand and use our body. The relationship, from my perspective, is this relationship of how are we using this finely tuned instrument of this physical body to experience life.
The manifestation of what's inside shows on the outside.
Absolutely. Yes. And what about the reverse holding true, that what's on the outside can actually affect the inside?
Absolutely. And this is so funny you bring this up, Megan, because years ago when I was in an acting class, this instructor had a very specific style of teaching. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just reading and performing. He actually connected, the first 3 to 4 months was connecting the students to their body. And it was about, okay, it's so hard sometimes to come up with an emotion that you're trying to look for, especially when there's 100 people around you, there's lights, there's cameras, it's a little nerve-wracking. Now, how do you connect to the emotion? He had us work from the outside in to create the emotion.
So tell me more about that. That's fascinating. What did he have you
do? So something like, let's just say if it's something to do with a very sad situation and the how that emotion would affect us. Well, for a lot of people, it's very hard to cry on cue. So what he would do is take us through breath work and create the breath as if though you were in a very sad situation. And it's amazing how when you begin that in your body, just through breath, which is so simple, it immediately kicks those different hormones and different pathways start to connect. And the next thing you know, you are set into that emotion. And that was on every level of emotion, from sadness, happiness, sexual experiences. Amazing what the body would end up following. So for people who didn't quite know or felt self-conscious, it was taken in through the breath and the body, and the emotion would connect. So it was, and where he learned it was through an indigenous tribe in South America. So, it was it was a very fascinating technique. And so when you're speaking about this, about people, raising the arms or pushing away, it immediately sets off a certain feeling in the body. It's like, if you say, come, come, your arms are already open and you're going, come, come, right?
Right.
So there's a certain openness and happiness. You're pulling people in towards your heart. And then when you go like pushing away, it's like, go away. It's an immediate response, like, stay there, don't come
it's
close.
Interesting that it's interesting that we tend to compartmentalize.
Yes.
What is an emotion? What is the intellectual concept of happiness or gratitude or appreciation? But there's a body realization of that emotion that is, it knows. I mean, this body knows that. And so the idea of putting ourselves into a position of happiness or in warrior position of strength, I think it's really powerful to think of the linkage between what we're learning in the Western science of positive psychology and how that particularly relates to the yoga postures that we do. Imagine the power of not just getting into the warrior pose, but getting into the warrior pose with the heartfelt idea of strength. And that really is what is intriguing me at this point, is that ability to link consciously what we're doing and moving and using the body as a way of consciously cultivating positive emotional states.
So I hope that was a wonderful moment for you and giving you an essence of positive psychology. Again, that was Megan McDonough, a little excerpt from Trinity of Life's episode 45, The Power of Yoga and Positive Psychology. If you enjoyed that snippet, we invite you to check the show out. It's a 1-hour show, and you'll learn a lot more about Megan and the path that she is on at this time. For any questions or comments, please scroll down on your screen and submit them through the comment box. Or if you prefer to give us a call, you may also do so at 818-LETS-TALK, 818-LETS-TALK. If you decide to leave a message via the voicemail, please leave your name and your contact information so that we will be able to get back to you, contact you. We would love to hear from you. If there's any speakers that you would like us to bring on, or at least attempt to get hold of to bring on our show, if there are speakers, if there are subject matters that relates to positive psychology, we would be most happy to do our best and in gathering of that information for you. YHTV is here and revolves around you. Be sure to check out our new slate of shows coming up for 2014. There is quite a few, so have fun as we are putting it together. It's been some time now. It's been 2 years in the making, and we hope to be able to continue to expand to be your health network, to be your new media in health and wellness. So we look forward to spending more time with you, to sharing more with you, to bringing you more of different modalities to help you find balance in your journey, in your individual journey. I'm Christina Suzama, and until next time, come join me in our virtual sandbox. Namaste. YHTV's Trinity of Life. Come join me, Christina Suzama, as I journey to find the many modalities that support individuals, from children to adults to elders, with topics ranging from health and wellness, meditation, and inspirational stories. I invite you to visit yogahub.tv every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern.
Many people that I know that are trying to diet, for example, and that seems to be on the minds of many today, they always feel, oh, if I miss a meal, that's much better because that way I can lose weight.
I am not an advocate of skipping meals because my experience is that it catches up with people. It's the old catch-22 of I'm going to be good during the day. I'm going to have this teeny breakfast and this teeny lunch, and then I'm starving and I'm going to crash and burn late at night and eat a half a gallon of ice cream.